Let's begin by exploring the role of a professional cloud architect in optimizing Cymbal Direct's technical and business processes and procedures for the cloud. Cymbal Direct has several initiatives in progress in addition to the existing web-based retail business, which is focused on footwear and clothing. As a professional cloud architect, you will need to ensure that you understand the requirements from both a business and technical perspective. After you understand the requirements, you can look into the existing environment. Some of the processes in place will govern how the environment is interacted with. Those processes might meet the requirements, but they might need to change if they don't. The requirements will always come from the stakeholders and serve the business's needs, but you might have to analyze the processes and see if they can be still used, if they need to be modified, or if you need to propose new ones. Let's review Cymbal Direct's business and technical requirements in the next slides. Cymbal Direct's management wants to make sure that they can easily scale to handle additional demand when needed, so that they feel comfortable with expanding to more test markets. Streamline development for application modernization and new features or products. Ensure that developers spend as much time on core business functionality as possible, without having to worry about scalability wherever possible. Allow for partners to order directly through an API. Get a production version of the social media highlighting service deployed and ensure no inappropriate content. When analyzing the business requirements, you want to look for duplicate or conflicting items. You can also look at other ways of meeting your business requirements if you need to change your solution. These are Cymbal Direct's technical requirements. Move to managed services wherever possible. Ensure that developers can deploy container-based workloads to testing and production environments in a highly scalable infrastructure. Standardize on containers where possible, but also allow for existing virtualization infrastructure to run without changes so that it can be slowly refactored over time. Securely allow partner integration. Allow for streaming of IoT data from drones. You can often rephrase the requirements as questions and use them as tests to ensure your solution meets the requirements. For example, move to managed services wherever possible could be rephrased as, did we move to a managed service if it was possible? The current build process at Cymbal Direct is: package a monolithic application with its dependencies, check code in and notify the QA team that they need to test it, stress test the application to ensure it performs well, build a VM image for deployment. This looks like it fails to meet several of the business and technical requirements. The diagram shows an example of an automated CI/CD pipeline. It starts with a planning phase. Code is checked into a source code repository, which triggers a build, which is tested. At each stage of this process, collectively known as the continuous integration phase, a failure will prevent further traversal of the pipeline. The continuous deployment phase consists of tagging the new successful build as a release, potential manual review, and deployment, which typically creates some type of artifact, a Docker image or VM for example, which is then deployed to production or staging depending on the environment. Finally, the operation and monitoring stage, sometimes shown separately, allows for feedback and learning to be integrated back into the planning stage for the next release. By using a CI/CD pipeline, Cymbal Direct gets a lot of value. It speeds up builds and ensures a consistent minimum level of quality. Having code automatically built and deployed also makes it very easy to revert to a previous version if necessary. As a professional cloud architect, your role involves analyzing this build process to determine if it meets your requirements. You identified that it does not meet the business requirements to streamline development and enable developers to focus on core business functionality. You also determined that the process does not meet the technical requirements to move to a managed services wherever possible and to deploy to container-based workloads. You want to define a new process to optimize the CI/CD pipeline. In the new process, developers implement new features as microservices in Docker containers. When new code is checked in, it triggers an automated CI/CD pipeline to test and release the newly built Docker image. The new version is automatically deployed to Cloud Run. This process provides several benefits. First, it's much easier to scale each microservice than to scale a monolithic application. Second, by using Docker containers, Cymbal Direct will meet the requirement to standardize on containerized workloads, which creates a more consistent environment from team to team and environment to environment. Finally, by deploying to Cloud Run, you are favoring a managed service, so developers do not need to worry about scale, which will provide more time to implement features that matter. This is a high-level example of a process, and a real-life build deployment process will contain much more detail. This is simplified for time purposes, but it is representative of the reasoning behind analyzing and defining new processes. As a professional cloud architect, you might want to recommend adopting approaches that will help improve reliability and stability. One approach is to refactor monolithic applications to microservices. Microservices are isolated from each other, so it is much easier to release and roll back independent units of code. Changes are isolated, so breaking things due to unknown interdependence is less likely, and microservices are easier to test because of their more limited scope. However, they can be difficult to implement initially. For example, if Cymbal Direct has a monolithic application that customers are using and getting value from, the best technical solution might be to refactor the application by using microservices. But this solution might be different from what the customer or stakeholders actually want. If the current application is creating value, they might want to avoid making major changes. A compromise approach could be to slowly refactor this monolith into a microservice architecture as changes are made as part of a continuous improvement approach. If you want to adopt microservice design patterns, you should implement them with new services. Because using a microservice approach accelerates feature deployment, it creates a more streamlined business process. You can have both the older approach for existing applications and microservices for new ones. It's not all or nothing. Understanding how to manage change, deploy resources, and ensure stakeholders are happy is a crucial skill you should have as a professional cloud architect. As a professional cloud architect, your role involves developing new procedures to ensure that Cymbal Direct's cloud solutions are reliable in production. Although this course is not going to become a philosophy class, you should consider an aspect of philosophy when you build procedures to ensure reliability of the processes you identified. There's a Stoic ideology that advocates taking time to embrace your fears, and not just metaphorically. If you're afraid of being poor, it says that you should become poor by locking away your worldly possessions and living without money for a few days. The belief is that you would overcome the challenge. Let's take this philosophical approach into the present. If you are afraid that your systems will crash, this philosophy would probably advocate for intentionally crashing them. Today, this approach is called chaos engineering, and some applications, such as Chaos Monkey, will intentionally crash systems by randomly turning them off. As a professional cloud architect at Cymbal Direct, you consider two types of procedures: chaos engineering and penetration testing. You consider how chaos engineering approaches can help you continuously improve the social media application and to lead to a more robust system design. You also want to ensure the security of IoT data streaming from Cymbal Direct's delivery by drone service. You follow Google recommended practices and draft penetration testing procedures to mimic the behavior of someone who's trying to hack your system. You want to conduct penetration testing regularly and whenever changes are made to the system, such as when the delivery by drone application is upgraded, when security patches are applied, or when policies addressing customer use are modified. You believe that developing both of these procedures will have immense value for Cymbal Direct and its customers, and will make your systems more secure and resilient.